All right. Good morning. You would make your way to Genesis chapter 12. That's where we're going to launch this morning. We've made our way through through the first 11 chapters, and we noted this last week that the first section of Genesis, those first 11 chapters really have God's dealing with humanity in general. There is one spot, of course, Noah and his family, that kind of zeroes in a little bit, but now instead of God and humanity in general, it's the narrative is going to focus on one particular family, right? Without forgetting about the rest of humanity, because it is about the rest of humanity that this one family exists. If you're with me for just a second. Got it? Okay, good, because I'm not sure I did, but all right. Words were coming out, but I wasn't sure that they were making sense. Okay, that happens a lot. So let's take a look for just a few minutes at these first three verses of Genesis 12. The Lord said to Abram, "Go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you. I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great, so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and him who dishonors you I will curse, and in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed." I just want to stop right there. Chapter 11 ends with the family. Hey guys, good to see you. Ends with the family line of Abram. And then we have this call. And it's kind of interesting. It's very familiar stuff, right? Very familiar to us, the call of Abraham. And I hope that one of the things that we hear in the call of Abraham is, if we could listen forward, I guess would be the way to think about that, is the same kind of call that we'll hear later from Jesus to those disciples that are around him after the resurrection. Right? Go and make disciples of all nations. Right? That the blessing of the family of Abraham was to be for all nations. And we realize that in the coming of Jesus and in the commission that we've been given. And that call. Okay? So here we go. The call to leave three things, right? Your country, your kindred, and your father's house. Sounds repetitive, and it is to some degree, but there's a few things wrapped up in that. Land is always even now, right, is a source of security. Would you go with me on that, right? This is what we own. This is ours. It's something that belongs to us. It's secure. It's where we belong. Leave that, is what he says. Your kindred and your father's house also may go to family gods that they worship. The same with country, regional gods. And the call, I believe it's intended, is that Abraham is to leave all of these and fully rely on Yahweh. And that's it. He has no land other than what God is going to promise him, although Abraham won't own it. And the family that is with him is the one that he takes, which will be Lot and Lot's family and Sarah. But he will be getting away from all of the rest of that, and it is to wherever God leads, with a full reliance that God's going to take him somewhere good. I always find this interesting. To the land that I will show you. It's a long way from where Abraham begins to Canaan. And it's very doubtful that he's ever seen this area of the world, ever. And for God to ask that seems like a big ask. But it seems also like a big leap for Abraham to go, okay, we go. So Abraham went, this is verse 4. Abraham went as the Lord had told him. Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he departed from Haran. Abram took Sarai, his wife, and Lot, his brother's son, all their possessions that they had gathered, and the people they had acquired in Haran, and they set out to go to the land of Canaan. When they came to the land of Canaan, Abram passed through the land to the place at Shechem, to the oak of Moreh. At that time the Canaanites were in the land. And the Lord appeared to Abram and said, "To your offspring I will give this land." So he built there an altar to the Lord, who had appeared to him. From there he moved to the hill country on the east of Bethel, pitched his tent with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. And there he built an altar to the Lord and called upon the name of the Lord. And Abraham journeyed on, still going toward the Negeb. We see quite a difference. Right? We see quite a difference between Abram and the folks that we had just seen earlier, right at the end of chapter 11, with the people at the Tower of Babel. Their goal was to make a name for themselves. Abram is relying on God to make his name great. Instead of building a tower, as in the case of the people of Babel, or even going back further, or a city like Cain, Abram builds an altar. Huh? Boy, it's starting out so well. But verse 10, there was a famine in the land. So Abram went down to Egypt to sojourn there, for the famine was severe in the land. When he was about to enter Egypt, he said to Sarai, his wife, "I know that you're a woman beautiful in appearance. And when the Egyptians see you, they will say, 'This is his wife.' Then they will kill me, but they'll let you live. Say you're my sister, that it may go well with me because of you, and that my life may be spared for your sake." When Abram entered Egypt, the Egyptians saw that the woman was very beautiful. And when the princes of Pharaoh saw her, they praised her to Pharaoh. The woman was taken into Pharaoh's house. And for her sake, he dealt well with Abram. He had sheep, oxen, male donkeys, male servants, female donkeys, and camels. All right. Then we take a step backwards. Right, it's looking so good, right? It is looking so good for Abram to this point, and then this. Famine hits. That area of the world, this is more common than we might think. Archaeologists, if I'm not mistaken, and I'm not sure how, but they have identified a long period of like hundreds of years period that would have been around, maybe around this particular time, of a drought cycle in that area. A drought cycle in a place that gets 4 to 12 inches of rain per year. So it doesn't take much to be a drought, right? So we have that. And so what Abram does is survival. Goes to Egypt. It's interesting, I think, and maybe it's not here on purpose, that there is no consulting of God who said, "I'm going to lead you to Canaan," about what to do in the situation of the famine. So he goes to Egypt. Now, then it really turns ugly. I mean, I don't know how else to say this. It really turns ugly. That Abram knows as he goes to Egypt that Sarai will be desired. Don't know much about that other than what it says. And so, to save his own skin, and you read it, it's all about him, right? They'll kill you, or they'll kill me, right? And so save my life and do this. they lie and say that she is his sister. Now, there's all kinds of various scholarship on this that talks about what that might mean, and it would put Abram in a position, if he was her brother, to negotiate and just to basically say no to a marriage, offer. That's not what happens. I mean, because look what he gets. He gets sheep, oxen, male donkeys, male servants, female donkeys, and camels. Not a good look for Abram. Wouldn't you agree? Ladies, wouldn't you agree? All right, okay, thank you. All right. However, God takes care of Abram. Right? We keep going. The Lord afflicted Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarai. God looks after Sarai, and Abram comes out in pretty good shape here. Pharaoh called Abram and said, "What is this you have done to me? Why didn't you tell me she was your wife? Why did you say she's my sister? So that I took her for my wife. Now then, here's your wife. Take her and go." Pharaoh gave men orders concerning him, and they sent him away with his wife and all that he had. Okay, lots of things. And the first one is, things like this, I hope, are a real encouragement to us. And here's what I mean. Most of us in here, I've used this one before, it's the old Randy Harris one, that we're closer to being buried than being born, right? But have long since, said yes to following Jesus, right? Long ago. Maybe not, maybe some more recent than others, but for the most of us, just as a general rule, have said, yes, we're going to follow. And we know, as long ago as that may have been, and I'm not going to ask for any years because that's not fun, but as long ago as that may have been, that we know that when we said yes, that it was not an immediate change, right? There was, we probably, like Abram, went a bit forward and a bit back, right? Or maybe that was just me. Okay, it was just me. All right, well, we'll move on from there, right? Years down the road, several years down the road, and even now, Abraham is going to be known as the father of the faithful. But he didn't start that way. So even as long as we have said, since we said yes to Jesus, I would imagine that there are still times when we take a step backwards, when we probably shouldn't, right? And it's easy to beat ourselves up for that, and sometimes it's deserving, sometimes it's not. But to remember that this journey from being who we were to who God has called us to be is not an immediate thing. It's going to take time, right? Formation takes time. This is one of 3 times, which is very interesting to me, this is one of 3 times this kind of thing happens in Genesis. The wife as the sister. And twice it's Abraham. So sometimes it takes a little bit longer, maybe. That's one. The other thing that I hope that we see is, and we've hit this several times in the past, is that our lack of faith, let's just call it that way, or our decisions that we make, our sin, however we want to word that, does not only affect us individually. It's Abraham's lack of trust, or seemingly lack of trust, puts Sarah in danger. Now, the text is pretty delicate here, about what actually goes on between Pharaoh and Sarai. Which leads me to think that there's probably more than what it's saying. Because when you get to round 2 of this, and Abraham and Abimelech, it's very clear. It's very clear that she did not spend the night with Abimelech. But it's not clear here. And so it doesn't just affect Abram, it affects Sarai, and it affects much, much more than just that. I hope we caught that what Abram comes out with, in addition to sheep and oxen and female camels and male donkeys and all of that, are male and female servants. And in just a little bit in the life of Abram, we're going to find that Abram and Sarah decide that in order to fulfill the promise that God has made of giving them an heir, that Abraham is going to have a child with Hagar, who is an Egyptian servant, probably from here. Now we can keep going from that, can't we? Because when we look at that, and we have the firstborn of Abram is Ishmael, that's where our Muslim friends say, we've made a mistake in who we follow. That Scripture now makes a shift and follows Isaac's line, and they follow Ishmael. And in case you haven't noticed, there's a little tension between Muslims and Jews over the years and centuries. Now, I'm not going to lay all that at Abram's feet, but it looks like we've got something here, right? That this has a ripple effect. Now, my particular sin problem may not cause generations of war in the Middle East. I hope, right? But it may cause trouble down the line for someone else. That make sense? It's rarely, if ever, private. All right? It is interesting to me that God takes care of them even in spite of his faithlessness, which is another very comforting thing. That doesn't erase the consequences, right? We've kind of walked through some of those. But that God still pursues and still cares for and still takes care of Abram, even when he went maybe where he wasn't supposed to go. The little word, and I don't know, I've read several things about it, when it says that he goes to Egypt and sojourns there, that at least there's some who believe that the intention for Abraham was not just that he go there for a little bit, get food, and leave, that he actually stay there for an extended period before coming back out. All right, but anyway, here we go. Let's go to 13. Abram went up from Egypt, he and his wife, all that he had, and Lot into the Negeb. Abram was very rich in livestock and silver and in gold. He journeyed on from the Negeb as far as Bethel to the place where his tent had been at the beginning between Bethel and Ai, to the place where he had made an altar at the first. And there Abram called upon the name of the Lord. And Lot, who went with Abram, also had flocks, herds, and tents, so that the land could not support both of them dwelling together, for their possessions were so great that they could not dwell together, and there was strife between the herdsmen of Abram's livestock and the herdsmen of Lot's livestock. At that time the Canaanites and Perizzites were dwelling in the land. It's interesting. It's a couple of times that the writer has mentioned that the Canaanites are there. I'm not really clear on why he's saying that, but he wants us to know. Abram said to Lot, let there be no strife between you and me, between your herdsmen and my herdsmen, for we're kinsmen. Is not the whole land before you? Separate yourself from me. If you take the left hand, I will go to the right. If you take the right hand, I will go to the left. Lot lifted up his eyes and saw that the Jordan Valley was well watered everywhere, like the garden of the Lord. like the land of Egypt in the direction of Zoar. This was before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. So Lot chose for himself all the Jordan Valley, and Lot journeyed east, and they separated from each other. Abram settled in the land of Canaan, while Lot settled among the cities of the valley and moved his tent as far as Sodom. And the men of Sodom were wicked and great sinners against the Lord. The Lord said to Abram, after Lot had separated from him, lift up your eyes and look from the place where you are, northward and southward and eastward and westward. For all the land that you see I will give to you and your offspring forever. I will make your offspring as the dust of the earth, so that no one can count, so that if one can count the dust of the earth, your offspring also can be counted. Arise, walk through the length and the breadth of the land, for I will give it to you. Abram moved his tent and came and settled by the oaks of Mamre, which were at Hebron. There he built an altar to the Lord. So all right, so we have the difficulty with Lot and Abram, I'm sorry. Name's not changed yet. I'm getting ahead of myself. Not a big stretch, by the way, to say that the land can't support them, right? This is not good river bottom land here, right? It's pretty sparse in areas. Still in the same area, it gets 4 to 12 inches of rain a year. It's easy to see that could be overdone. And so they decide to change, to split up. And so Abram offers first, which I think is quite a gesture, right? Since he seems to be the one who is leading this, but he says to Lot, pick your spot. He looks toward the Jordan Valley, which if you look, I meant to have some pictures and I apologize, I don't have those. But if you look in the Jordan Valley, so prior to the Dead Sea area, it's well watered, it's very nice. You get down around the Dead Sea area, it's not good, right? But the Jordan Valley, oh yeah. I mean, you go, sure, let's go this way. So he goes. One little thing, and I don't know if I've mentioned this earlier or not. Lot journeys east. Okay, big deal. In Genesis, and early Genesis especially, east is seen as away from God. Those directions, when they get mentioned, they have something else with them, okay? So think about this for a second, and I think I'm right. Adam and Eve get kicked out of the garden. And God guards the entrance, right? Sends a cherubim with a flaming sword to guard the entrance of the garden on its east side. So to get back into the garden would be to move west, back toward God. East is always away. And here we are, Lot going east, which ought to give us some idea about what's going to happen to Lot very soon. He's moving away from where God is. He's looking at this of going, okay, I can do well here, but he's not paying attention to the people who are around there. He moved his tent as far as Sodom, right? And that's gonna come back to bite him, right? However, Abram trusts this time, right? Trust in God, and God says, the land is yours. This land is yours. Walk it, look at it. I'm giving this all to you and to your descendants. Now again, I don't believe Abram's going to actually own anything in Canaan, except for where Sarah's buried. That's going to be it. Right? But it's going to be passed down to his descendants. All right. And again, we have an altar. Right, so we see this kind of pattern and this kind of habit being formed in Abraham at this point. All right, 14. We're covering quite a bit. The days of Amraphel, king of Shinar, Arioch, king of Elasar, king of Elam, and the king of Goim, These kings made war with Bera, king of Sodom, Bersha, king of Gomorrah, king of Sodom, Bersha, king of Gomorrah, Shinab, king of Admah, Shemeber, king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, that is Zoar. These joined forces in the valley of Siddim, that is the Salt Sea, 12 years. They had served this king, but in the 13th year they rebelled. In the 14th year, this Kedorlaomer and the kings who were with him came and defeated Rephaim and Ashtaroth, Karane and Zuzim and Ham, and we go through all those names. That's all fun. Then they turned back and came to camp in Mishpat, that is Kadesh, and defeated all the country of the Amalekites and also the Amorites who were dwelling in Hazan Tamar. King of Sodom, the king of Gomorrah, king of Admah, king of Zeboim, king of Bela, went out and they joined battle in the valley of Siddim with the king of Elam, the king of Goyim, king of Shinar, king of Elasar, 4 kings against 5. The valley of Siddim was full of bitumen pits. The kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled. Some fell into them. The rest fled into the hill country. The enemy took all the possessions of Sodom and Gomorrah, their provisions, and went their way, and they also took Lot, the son of Abram's brother, who was dwelling in Sodom, and his possessions, and went their way. One who had escaped came and told Abram, the Hebrew, who was living by the oaks of Mamre, the Amorite, brother of Eshcol and of Aner. These were allies of Abram. When Abram heard that his kinsman had been taken captive, he led forth his trained men, born in his house, 318 of them, and went in pursuit as far as Dan. Divided his forces against them by night. He and his servants defeated them and pursued them to Habah, north of Damascus. Then he brought back all the possessions and also brought back his kinsman Lot with all his possessions and the women and the people. After his return from the defeat of Kedorlaomer, the kings who were with him, the king of Sodom, went out to meet him at the valley of Shavah, that is the king's valley. Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. He was the priest of God Most High. And he blessed him and said, Blessed be Abram by God Most High, possessor of heaven and earth, and blessed be God Most High, who's delivered your enemies into your hand. Abram gave him 1/10 of everything, and the king of Sodom said to Abram, Give me the persons, but take the goods for yourself. Abram said to the king of Sodom, I have lifted my hand to the Lord God Most High, possessor of heaven and earth, and I would not take a thread or a sandal strap or anything that's yours, lest you should say, I've made Abram rich. I will take nothing but what the young men have eaten and the share of the men who were with me. Let Aner, Eshcol, and Mamre take their share. All right. Ooh, that was fun. That was a fun read. A couple of things. Doesn't go well for Lot. He's captured. Abram goes and rescues him in this big battle, and there's some history behind these battles of the kings, but that's not really what the author's driving at, I don't think. But we get introduced to a new character. A new character that I think is only mentioned 2 other times. But he's important somehow, right? Melchizedek. Melchizedek is the king of Salem. Also translated king of peace, by the way. Salem is very close to Shalom. And in the area of Jerusalem, before it's called Jerusalem, the king of Salem. And he's also called the priest of the God Most High. Strange. Blesses Abram. Abram gives him, a 1/10 of what it is that he's gotten out of this battle. He's a strange character because I think his name is mentioned, right now, this part I'm working from memory. I believe his name is mentioned in the Psalms somewhere. But the other reference to him is in Hebrews. That he is, and in Hebrews, he is talked about as one who has no beginning, as in no genealogy, there's nothing there, right? that we know of, and that that Jesus is a priest after the order of Melchizedek. Seems strange to me, because if you trace back family lines, it's Judah, and Judah is not even thought of here. But as one who serves as the priest of God Most High, right, who blesses Abram. We'll talk more about Melchizedek as we make our way through, but it's just fun to find these old names as we make our way through. I think it's interesting, and it shows a lot about Abram's character, I guess, maybe, is that if you think about giving Lot the first option on the land, how about that? And it goes, okay, he's taking the best of it. And if you look that direction, that'd probably be right. He's taking the best of it. And then he goes, and now he's embroiled in this, and he's taken captive. And Abram still feels enough loyalty and enough care for this nephew that he goes and rescues him out. Relatively small force, he goes and he brings them. He brings them home. Doesn't take any more than what he believes that is due. He gives part back to the priest to offer, only what his men have eaten and the rest, and he gives the rest back to the king of Sodom, right? And everybody is released. But what about Lot? Let's talk about him for just a second. Lot goes back to where he was before. And trouble's going to follow there again, right? Right? I mean, we know the story, right? We go a little bit further in, and Lot's going to end up in a pretty bad spot. And I guess maybe the thought is, from Lot's point of view for a second, or if we could kind of put ourselves in his shoes, is that we go, okay, that just seems silly. I mean, you've not been there hardly any time, and you get taken captive, and somebody has to come and rescue you, but then you go right back. Do we ever do anything like that? Where we get ourselves in a situation, maybe we put ourselves in a place, doesn't turn out well, God rescues us out. Just think about what we talked about just a little bit ago with God rescuing us out of sin. And we go, all right, here we go. And before long, we move right back in that direction. It's crazy to think of, isn't it? That we do that. You know, well, this time it'll be different. Right? See where I made my mistake last time. That won't happen again. But it happens again. One of the things about getting hung up in it and getting hung up in sin and getting free from that is that God is there to help and to rescue, right? Yes? But there is some responsibility on us to recognize the direction we're going. How about that? The things that, well, we've already mentioned the Hebrews writer. Let's mention him again. When he talks about the sin that so easily entangles, right? And that's different, right? It's not just one for all of us, right? Each of us have that one or hopefully it's just one, right? But we have that one that kind of gets a hold of us, that we try to shake, and we try to get away from it, and then we get away from it for a while, but then before long, we're right back, and we get a hold of it again. Okay? There's a part of that. Well, there's a big part of that. A giant part of that is that we're not paying attention to the direction we're moving. How about that? There are things that if we were to sit and we were to reflect on what it is that's got us in that situation, what's got us in that thing where God has got to come and rescue us again and again and again. If we stop and we think about how we got there, I think what we would notice that there's some signposts along the way. Right? And I think what we ought to learn from Lot is to start looking at the signs a little. And I've gone, wait a minute, hold on. I've been down that road before. And maybe whatever that is, whatever I'm getting close to, maybe I ought to move in a different direction. See, that comes right back again to where we started with Abram. Abram really messed us up in Egypt, right? I mean, I know Abraham's a great hero of Scripture, but this is a bad move. Right? We can't, I don't think we can whitewash this. I don't think we can dress this up and make it look good. It's just a bad thing. But part of that, right, part of that is based on the fact that Abram's lived 75 years in one direction. And now a new direction has to be taken. And see, the habits from the first 75 years are really ingrained. And it's very, very easy to move just on autopilot in that direction. Wouldn't you agree? Am I way off here? What's so great about these old texts like this and these old familiar stories is that what they're meant to do is for us to find ourselves there and go, oh, okay, I got it, right? Because we have the same things. We have the same habits. We've lived in a direction for however many years. And maybe we've changed directions a long time ago. We talked about that when we said, yes, Jesus, we're going to follow you. We changed directions a long time ago. And at first, right? And at first we really probably had trouble with this. We may have had more trouble with this. Maybe we didn't. If you didn't, then God bless you, right? But maybe we had more trouble with this than not, of breaking those old habits. But still yet, even after the time that we've spent following, those old habits have a way of finding us again. Or we have a way of finding them, because they've never quite gone yet. It happens much more frequently than we would like. And when I say we, I mean me. When all of a sudden, something happens. And the alarm goes off. No. All of a sudden, something happens, and the reaction is what is from the person I used to be. Anybody else? And it's recognizing those spots and stopping then to go, wait a minute, that's something that I need to move in a different direction. Man, there's just stuff going off everywhere in here. All right. And that's the one I like the least, by the way. You guys love it. Somebody paid Roy, if he'll start ringing that a little bit earlier. Yeah. Where are the bids starting? Anyway. Anybody got thoughts on that just real quick before we close out? Because I want to jump into chapter 15. Okay. So let's do this. Let's think about what it is that we need to do in order to make the habits of following Jesus more and more permanent. Right now, I'm talking to an auditorium Bible class on Sunday morning. Come on, right? Most of you have got this. Most of you ought to be up here telling me what it is that we ought to do to get these habits right. But they're the little things. They're being attentive to what's going on around us. They're paying attention to the ways that we respond to the things that happen in the world around us, or sometimes very, very close to the world around us. There's a great little, let's call it a discipline. It's a habit to develop. There's a great one. There's an actual fun name for it, but I can't remember what it is. It works like this, is that at the end of the day, I've taken some time at the end of the day, at the end of every day, to kind of walk back through the day's events. And honestly, right, with ourselves, to go, okay, here are the things that happened today. This is what I did. These are the things that happened. These are the interactions I had, and this is how I responded to them. And then just kind of lay them out and go, okay, how did it look? Right? Hopefully, right? Hopefully that's nothing that we're really got to worry too much about. We go, hey, being honest, going, okay, I did okay. Right? With the way that God would have me respond to people, living and following what it is that Jesus is asking me. Yes, I think I did pretty well. However, there was this spot. And kind of evaluating it. If we've messed it up, tell him. But it helps us to recognize the signs. It helps us to know the next time of going, right? I remembered that. And hopefully those become less and less frequent. Does that make sense? Okay, let's close with a prayer. Father, we love you. We want so desperately to be your people and to follow you and to respond to the things around us the way that you would have us to, the way that we've seen it done in your Son. Father, you know the old habits that we've had, and we're thankful for the progress that we've made, that you've allowed us to make, that you've helped us to make through the Spirit that you've given us to shed those and to create new ones. We also, Father, understand that there are those that have been difficult to shake or are still hanging around, and we ask that you help us to be aware of them, that we pay attention to the direction that we're moving, that we move toward you, and that we become people who respond to the world in the way that you do. We do that, Father, because our goal is the same as yours, to be a blessing to the nations around us, to be a blessing to all people. so that they will know who you are and that they can enjoy the life that you have promised. We're thankful, Father, for our time together, for these ancient, old narratives. Our prayer is that we're faithful to them as we look at them. We get the things from them that you've left for us to find. We love you so much, and we're so thankful for our time together. In Jesus' name, amen.